George Pickens had another quiet outing on Sunday, but we'll tell you why you shouldn't be concerned next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us the number one sports podcast network. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this football season, visit FanDuel.com to place your live NFL bets all season long. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is Landon McCool. And on today's show, we're going to talk about the Cowboys' offensive tackle situations. We'll talk about some players that maybe the Cowboys should consider sitting over the final three games now that they're basically out of playoff contention. But Landon, I want to start with this. We had George Pickens who had a really rough outing against Detroit last Thursday. And then we all thought he was going to have a big game against Minnesota. That wasn't the case. So that's kind of back-to-back poor statistical outings. Are you concerned?
I'm not really concerned so much. I think, and you and I talked about this and kind of see kind of eye to eye on this. And, there's one of the other subjects I'm really interested in is physics, right? And in physics, they're constantly using things like gravity to kind of measure how they need to bend light in order to get lensing corrects on some of these bigger telescopes. And you have to know the effect of gravity has on light in order to measure, and be able to measure that. And I think that's what we're doing with Pickens in some of these games, right? Is that he may not have had a huge game last night, but the Cowboys averaged almost 5 yards a carry because of the coverage that was put out there to stop Pickens. CeeDee Lamb, went 6 receptions on 10 targets for 111 yards because of the room provided by George Pickens. So for me, I think if George Pickens doesn't have a big game, but all the rest of the offense does, and it seems very clear that based on the schematics and how the defense was playing you, it's a lot based on the fact that they're trying to prevent George Pickens from having a big game. I think to me that's as good as him having a big game. That's as good as him having a good game, and I don't add it to the pile of games that where he didn't perform well specifically. He wasted a bunch of targets, or his body language was really, really poor, that sort of thing. To me, this is still falls well under George Pickens providing and doing his job for the offense.
Yeah, and I think he had, 2 bad statistical games, but I don't think he had 2 bad games. I think the Lions game was a bad game. This wasn't a bad game. He just didn't get the targets because they were going to CeeDee Lamb because of what Brian Flores was doing. And I think there's going to be some of those games where you need to get rid of the ball quick. And I think because CeeDee Lamb can move into the slot, he's the guy that moves into motion. It's just easier to get him the football. And the Vikings were sitting on a lot of these slant routes, kind of daring Dak to hold the ball and throw it down the field. The problem is they couldn't even get back into a drop back game because the tackles played so poorly up front. It happens. And again, I would be concerned if they weren't moving the ball. If CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens were both having bad days, just chalk it up as it happens. Don't be concerned about this game. If you want to be concerned about the Lions game, I get it. I'm not concerned about this one.
Yeah, to me, this is a cause of sequencing, right? Because of the game with Detroit and the bad body language and people talking about a poor Pickens performance last week. And look, I think it's debatable. Obviously, the numbers would tell you that as well, right? I think that game being let's actually examine this. Is this a bad George Pickens game? That being right before this game where he didn't statistically have a good game, but he was being very heavily, guarded. There's circumstance here. There's context to be provided here. And again, I think the Cowboys offense had no problem moving the football. I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that the defense had to adjust and make up for Pickens, including having one less body in the box to take him out of the deep part of the field. So I think that it's easy to kind of see these two games next to each other and say this is a 2 games in a row of the same thing.
Yeah,
I would, after looking at the tape, I wouldn't look at it like that. I
No.
think this is a more isolated situation of, hey, they schemed Pickens out of the game, and that actually provided opportunity for other guys to actually produce.
And having said all that, I want to go back to CeeDee Lamb because he's been really good since coming back from the high ankle injury. He had that game against Philadelphia where he had, 3 drops in that game. But outside of that, man, Landon, he's been awesome. So since coming back from the high ankle injury, he's averaging over 94 receiving yards per game. And you can see Pickens, honestly, I think Pickens is the more talented player, but CeeDee, when he's catching the football, is just the more reliable and consistent guy. He can do a little bit more in your offense, and that's why they've built this offense around CeeDee Lamb. It's really nice to see him kind of getting back into his groove.
And I think it's time for us to start mentioning, weekly how good Flournoy has been. I mean, he has been outstanding these last few weeks to be able to step up and produce the way he has. He's been a high, he has got a high level of converting his targets to receptions. He's producing week to week. He's making big plays when you're calling upon him. It's not too big for him anymore. And he's, even on third downs when they're looking at all the other superstars, he's found ways to get open and convert those. So the Cowboys haven't had a problem necessarily from their wide receiver production these last few weeks.
No,
obviously the Lions situation is examinable for Pickens, but I think overall they've gotten what they needed from the passing attack. It's more generalized, I think, specifically issues in the red zone, which the passing attack is part of, but I think holistically their problems exist in actually punching the ball into the end zone once they get to the red zone. Getting to the red zone is not a problem.
No, they've got to figure out the red zone offense. I do want to talk about Flournoy really quickly because he's seized this wide receiver 3 job. He wasn't even on the roster on cut down days, but now he's somebody who's playing over 50% of the snaps. Again, not big statistical production, but 4 catches for 40 yards. That's coming off a big game last week. He had 3 for 34 against Kansas City. And I actually thought Chris Collinsworth had an interesting quote where he was talking to Dak pregame, and Dak said that Flournoy believes he's just as good as CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, and he's not going to tell them otherwise. And they really think that, he's got the confidence to be that receiver. And, this is somebody who the Cowboys still have, I believe, 2 more years of roster control over after the 2025 season. It sure feels like they don't need to figure out the wide receiver spot. They bring back George Pickens, and this room is finished.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of also why I sort of tap the brakes when folks talk super negatively about the Mingo situation, because I get it. They traded a 4th-round pick, and ultimately that's not good what they got. But the truth of the matter is that I think Flournoy exceeded expectations. Like everyone, I think they probably penciled Mingo in for the spot that Flournoy has taken, because of circumstance. Flournoy's taken that job and completely not relinquished it to anyone, including Jalen Tolbert, who had it previously. So, yeah, kudos to Flournoy to be able to kind of develop the way he needed it. Again, I think someone said too, this was his first year working with a professional wide receiver coach in the offseason. I can't wait to see what he does next year. Let's give him a little bit of offseason cash and see what he can do with it.
One of the things I thought was really funny, though, he's almost 3 years older than George Pickens, which I think is hilarious. So he's a little bit older. But, I mean, every time the Cowboys have called his number, he's been pretty consistent this year outside of the one play against the Lions where the ball got ripped out of his hands. I think he's done a good job of stepping up. And more often than not, with these small school receivers, you see the biggest jump in their play from year 2 to year 3. And I would expect that to be the case for Flournoy going in next season. Could not be more excited about him. Can't say the same about the offensive tackle situation, which continues to be a disaster. We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. And with FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. And live betting is the best when the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. And FanDuel lets you jump into that moment with live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly, player props that update as guys heat up, and you can bet on everything from next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and so much more. It keeps you locked into every single snap. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com to place your live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. If you are a true diehard Cowboy fan, the Everyday or All Access tier is built for you. You'll get one-on-one text access with Landon and I, all access episodes, an exclusive newsletter every single day, and a 15% discount to the Locked On merch store. Head over to lockedoncowboys.supercast.com to join the Everyday Club and unlock all access, and you can find the link in the show notes. All right, let's talk about the offensive tackle situation, because going into the year, we felt really good about Tyler Guyton, Nate Thomas as a backup, Terence Steele as your right tackle. But as the years played out, I actually feel way worse about this unit kind of going into 2026.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the plan feels like it's taken a rough hit, right? Like these last few weeks. and it just feels like the situation's changed a lot. I would have said, and I think we had to have said, over the last 3 or 4 weeks, that kind of moving forward, Guyton was our guy at left tackle, with the idea that Nate Thomas, man, if he can go in and have a good offseason, maybe he can grab that starting spot from Terence Steele on the right side. You can save yourself a little bit of money, cut Terence Steele next year. I think it's something like 12 million or something like that. It might be more. And I think that was, a pretty solid development plan. You also kind of like what you've seen so far from AJ Cornelius. And I think that's kind of another guy that you just have kind of in your back pocket. And then we had seen some, solid play, at least in the early part of the season and in the preseason, from Akeem Adeniji as well. So I think we felt a lot more confident. And these last 2 weeks, you've seen Nate Thomas out there at left tackle, and you've seen his struggles. I think he played a little bit better this week than he did last week, but then he gets hurt, right? And then you've got Akeem Adeniji out there, and he really, really struggled. So, it's. I think, now we've gotten to a situation where we're all, and I think the other thing that's been weird too is that I think Terence Steele has played pretty good football so far this season overall, and in these last few weeks. I just feel like they're in a spot where maybe they don't feel as certain about Nate Thomas these last few weeks. Maybe it throws some uncertainty at the position moving forward. But the Cowboys are also in a spot where they can't really spend resources here. So, they've already spent their resources here. So what are they going to do?
You cannot draft a first-round offensive lineman. I mean, I guess you can, but you've already invested. You've already invested a first-round pick into Tyler Guyton, a first-round pick in Tyler Smith, a first-round pick in Tyler Booker, a third-round pick in Cooper Beebe, and then you're paying Terence Steele at right tackle. Eventually, you just got to draft and develop some of these guys on day 2 and day 3 and figure it out. No other team in the NFL has 4 first-round picks who they've all drafted on their offensive line. I don't know if the option is like a stopgap guy that you get in free agency who is like, $7 to $8 million a year. I don't know, but man, it's just, they spent too much money to have these games where the offensive line cannot hold up at all.
Yeah. I think at this point they just kind of have to see it through. Maybe you try to see what you can get in free agency as some kind of veteran competition. But honestly, I think you probably just roll into next year. Maybe you have to hold on to Terence Steele just to kind of stabilize that spot. Maybe you can't roll that money, or maybe you just, extend him or something, or find a way to move that money around a little bit, because I just don't know that you're at a spot where you feel super confident about the idea of just sight unseen having Nate Thomas penciled in as your right tackle. Because that's the other thing, is we haven't really seen him too much on the right side. He was supposed to be kind of rotating with Terence Steele at a certain point, and then Terence Steele completely took hold of that job and has played pretty decently since that announcement. Mm-hmm. So I think there's just a lot of more uncertainty at the spot than you had previous to that. And then I think the other aspect that we need to talk about here is that Tyler Guyton has just missed a lot of games due to injury. And I don't know that it's like a chronic thing. And I think it's probably going to get better, hopefully, as he gets on, because it does feel like he's continuing to work on some of the flexibility stuff that could be, especially early, cause some of his issues in year one. But he had another high ankle sprain this year, and it's continued to linger and cause him issues. It's certainly something that has to be mentioned. I don't know if I would reach the point of chronic yet, but it's something at this point that it's been regular, and you have to at least plan for it, and that calls into question the depth of the tackle position.
It reminds me a little bit of actually both Connor McGovern and Connor Williams, like early on in their careers, they just struggled with these nagging injuries and they weren't able to get over them until I think, Connor McGovern has done a good job in Buffalo of, kind of getting past that. But these guys have to kind of learn how to be able to play through pain and play well through pain. And I'm not saying that Tyler Guyton should be out there because it's a high ankle sprain. He also had a concussion. He had a knee injury in training camp. But I mean, being available is one of the most important parts of being an offensive lineman. And he just hasn't been that yet. Again, I feel very confident that he can do that long-term. It's frustrating right now. And it's putting the offense behind the 8 ball. There's nothing you can do about it. But again, most of these guys do end up figuring it out.
I mean, I think we could have, subtitled this whole segment as man, you need Nate Thomas to grow up quicker, because ultimately that's been your plan here, is that Nate Thomas kind of solves your sort of immediate issue for swing tackle and solves your long-term issue at right tackle. So yeah, I think we've put a lot of eggs in the Nate Thomas basket. And I think previous to this, he's shown us, a lot to work with and a lot to feel good about. I think these last few games have not been good data points, and it makes you call into question the kind of long-term, stability of that situation. So whether it's just, hoping you get a little bit more from AJ Cornelius, or hoping that an off season of refining work a little bit will even help Nate Thomas take that next step, the Cowboys are probably going to have to solve this problem in-house.
And again, I know we talked about this, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, but is there any thought this offseason into maybe moving Tyler Smith out to one of the tackle spots, keeping Tyler Guyton at one of them, making Nate Thomas the swing guy, moving on from Terence Steele, and maybe trying to save some money that way with, either TJ Bass or Brock Hoffman playing that other guard spot?
I mean, I certainly think it's something that you can consider, but I just don't know that I just don't think that Tyler Smith was that great at tackle. I think he was a much better player at guard. I think, again, when we look back at those tackle snaps that he played, I think it was through the lens of, thank God we had a left tackle, and if we're looking at the position, and what we want at the ceiling at the position and that sort of thing, I don't think you're getting the full value out of the player that you just paid a bunch of money to by playing him at tackle. I think you get it by playing him at guard. But
is your offensive line? I agree with you, by the way. You're getting a better player with Tyler Smith at left guard. But is your offensive line better if he's playing left tackle?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. I think you have a Guyton problem at that point, switching him back to right tackle after focusing so much,
and that's fair as well.
I think that's a tough ask, So now you're asking about either asking Tyler Smith or Tyler Guyton to flop sides. It's a lot to ask, and again, when the margins are tight here, and you don't even know if you're getting that much of an improvement playing him at tackle. I think it's probably better to solve the tackle problem in a more proper way.
All right, let's talk about some players that the Cowboys should consider sitting over the final 3 games. Their odds of making the playoffs now are basically none. They could actually be eliminated from postseason contention, by Saturday afternoon if Philadelphia wins. Could the Cowboys shut down players like Javonte Williams and even Dak Prescott? We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Do you ever feel like your money just disappears each month? It happens fast. A few subscriptions here, an impulse buy there, and suddenly the numbers in your bank account don't match the numbers in your head. But Rocket Money helps you get clarity. It'll help you track every dollar and stay in control of your finances, because managing your money shouldn't feel like a second job. And Rocket Money does the heavy lifting for you so you can save more and stress less. Rocket Money finds subscriptions that you forgot that you were paying and helps you clean them up quickly. And seeing where all your money is being spent makes it really nice to see where you can cut back and where you can save. So take control of your finances and cancel your unwanted subscriptions with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That is rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. All right, Landon, we're into the part of the season that I absolutely hate the most. It's these final 3 games where they're meaningless, but you're still going out there to try to play to win. I'm not saying the Cowboys should tank, because I don't think tanking is a real thing that you can do with these players. However, you can't tell them to go out and lose. That's ludicrous. However, you can rest some guys that are either banged up or maybe that are too valuable to expose in some meaningless games. And I don't think you do it this week against the Chargers. And I have a hard time seeing the Cowboys doing it on Christmas Day as well on Netflix. But maybe you limit their snaps a little bit. Maybe you pull them off in week 18. What are the guys that come to your mind that you think could see a decrease in snaps?
Well, I think one of the guys that you mentioned, and I don't know if he will see a decrease in snaps, but a guy that I think they need to make a plan for his decrease in snaps is Javonte Williams. Like I think now that the season is kind of sort of out of reach for the playoffs, as he's accumulated more and more touches, the likelihood of him getting injured near the end of the year is getting higher and higher. And I just think you haven't had a plan or really done much in the way of having a running back 2 on this roster at any point this year. And now you're dealing with Lipke, who I think is still in concussion protocol, if I'm not mistaken. And Malik Davis is here. And I think, he certainly is going to be a part of this, but I also think that you should consider maybe getting another running back on this roster, just to kind of throw some carries at, and just to kind of limit a guy that I would want to bring back next year. So I think Williams is a guy that would probably be one of the first off my list. But I think generally we should talk about guys that are, part of a rotation that are easy to either swap them out with someone else or increase somebody else's snaps and then just reduce their exposure, right?
Especially now, what's the benefit of playing Kenneth Murray and Logan Wilson at this point? Like, neither of those guys are going to be back in 2026.
Well,
you might as well just play Maris Leafau, Shamar James, DeMarvion Overshown, and just let those 3 guys get as many snaps as possible.
I actually will push back on that, because I would rather them not overexposed DeMarvion Overshown, and if anything, I would like.
Well, that makes sense. Yes, I agree.
You know what I'm saying? So for me, I would press Kenneth Murray, even though we just reduced his snaps, and it seems like, whatever.
It's just, but see, I think James could really benefit from having.
Yes, I don't disagree with that. I think you should play the young guys, and I think if they're healthy, they should play. I think Overshown is the obvious specific exception, because he was rushed back, because he's recovering from an ACL. I think he's the guy that I'm just like, man, it's not worth it, right? Like, it's not worth, like, not saying pull him off the field completely, but he played, I think, 93% of the snaps, if I'm not mistaken, in this last game. He doesn't need to be doing that anymore, just because we don't need him to get hurt. So yeah, I think it's stuff like that. Just guys who are back from injury, or maybe back too soon from injury, they can play a little bit less. We don't need anybody getting hurt. I mean, look what happened to Micah Parsons, right? Like, do I want that having to, let's say here's another guy, Quinnen Williams? No, I don't. So
I would not rush him back from his concussion this week. There's absolutely no reason to do that.
No reason to. And if anything, like, when he comes back, maybe only play him on third downs, or
I'd like to see more Perrion Winfrey, right?
Like some Perrion Winfrey, right?
Yeah.
You just see him active, for goodness sakes.
Fair. Yeah.
Yeah, I think agree.
Now, what about Dak Prescott? I think this is the hard one. He's going to start this week against the Chargers. But is there any part of you where we get to week 18 and it's just like, okay, Dak, you fought really hard this year. We know that you've been battling with some lower body injuries. Let's just have Joe Milton go out there and start the annual Joe Milton game in week 18 to see what he can do.
No, I think it's smart football too. I mean, you want to see Joe get out there and get some snaps and see what you've got in him. Every time Joe's been on the field, like in a regular season game, he's pretty good, man. Like, he certainly isn't the same guy we see in training camp or
preseason.
In preseason. Yeah, like it's like suddenly gets out there and all of the other teams are like, wow, Joe Milton, look what he's doing. And we're like, I don't know where this guy came from. Yeah. So no, I think seeing maybe Joe in one of these games, give some of the other down roster wide receivers more opportunities to catch some of these balls. Do not need to expose Pickens or CeeDee Lamb, obviously, to anything other than that. I just think that, some of these guys that are super high leverage players, it's not that you pull them off the field. It's just that all these guys are basically in rotation except for, the offensive line and Dak. So it's just about adjusting their rotations to the point where you're letting the younger guys get some more opportunities. You're letting the guys you cannot afford to get injured a little bit more of a breather.
One last guy, Jaden Blue. He's been a healthy scratch. We really haven't seen him in the last 3 months. You just let him go out there and rack up 100 touches over the next 3 games and kind of let him his welcome to the NFL moment?
I mean, he's got to to get on the field and run plays. He's got to be at a point where the coaches can trust him to run the play properly, to take the call and to know what to do. And it can't just be you have to be able to take an audible. You have to be able to adjust to the audible and then do what's called for the play that gets audible to. So, yeah, I mean, it's not just about getting him opportunities, but can he buy his own opportunity by being prepared to get into the game and make the adjustments?
Who knows? My guess is probably not, but maybe we'll see him for a game or two. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen of the day. Did Locked On Cowboys make your Spotify Wrapped? Prove it to us on social media to secure a free month of our brand new Everydayer Club. Just tag our national Locked On Podcast Network account on any social platform, and we'll drop you a code. Be one of the first to join the Everydayer Club to get your favorite show ad-free and exclusive access to the members-only Discord channel. And for those of you that are on video, you can get our first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel as well. And make sure you check out Locked On NFL. 2 listens every single day. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.